Greetings, my friends. This is, of course, Dr. Jimmy at your service. And today, I would like to present my 11th video in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 23, What Evil Has Taken Root, which was held at Universal Studios, Florida in the year 2013. Of course, as usual, first I will show off my t-shirt of the day. Today's t-shirt has a bit of a zombie theme. We want brains. Oh, yum yum. But what sort of shirt is this really? Let me show you. You can see on the back, I'm not sure, let's get closer. You can see on the back it says American Mensa. Hopefully you could see that. Thus it is indeed an official shirt, with the joke being a zombie thing. But we want brains because it's a shirt from Mensa, which is an association for people with above average IQs. I think the minimum you have to have is somewhere around 120. I'm not certain what the minimum was, but yes, you have to be officially a genius to belong to Mensa. So you're probably wondering, 169, dude! Yes, I know. Interesting coincidence. I'm not exactly dumb. Not to brag about that sort of thing. I never would have got the t-shirt except for the zombie part, which I thought was funny. Otherwise I wouldn't even wear a Mensa shirt. I don't really like going around bragging. That's a bit bad form. In fact, you know, as a general rule, people who go out of the way to tell you how smart they are usually aren't. Just a general rule. Okay. So, getting back to the event of Halloween Horror Nights 23. And in my previous videos, I did manage to complete 4 haunted houses, and that means there are 4 left to talk about. Because, wonderfully, there were 8 haunted houses at the event in 2013. I say wonderfully. Of course, there weren't there 8 houses at the event since Carnival of Carnage in 2007. Indeed, that was the first year they went up to 8. But, as you might remember from previous videos, my history of the event of Halloween Horror Nights 22, a bit of an infamous year for a lot of people, they went down to 7 houses. They hadn't had 7 houses since 2006. They went down in the number of houses, and that's something the lovely people at Creative and Art and Design, the people who put on this event for us every year, don't like doing at all. No, in fact, back in 2010, TJ Manarino had said, we'll never go down in number of houses, we'll just go up, but we'll never go down. And that's not allowed. But sometimes your best laid plans get all, well, screwed up, because shit happens and you find that you can't help it, you know. And in that case there were all sorts of things going on, things closing, new construction, and they ended up only being able to do 7 houses in 2012, which they did not want to do. And so they were determined, by God, they'll do 8 houses in 2013. And they managed to do 8 houses in 2013 by being able to use more space in the scare zones. That was the first year they had 4 houses in the scare zones. They've managed to keep it at 4 houses in the scare zones every year since then, and maybe that's what they'll continue into the future. We think there'll be at least 4 houses in the scare zones this year, but again, we have to wait and see. Oh, so far only 2 houses have actually been announced that will definitely be in scare zones for the upcoming event of Halloween Horror Nights 26. Of course, The Exorcist and the next Walking Dead house, whatever that will be, based on the all 6 seasons, but we don't have the full title of the house, just Walking Dead. And we know an original house will be there in that same soundstage 24 with Walking Dead. We don't know what that is yet. And who knows what it'll be. I bet it'll be a rootin' tootin' house though, you know, yippee-ki-yay type house, I think. And of course, what some people have called the mega house, because Michael has affirmed there is a mega house based on some IP that will be some supremely big house, possibly in Soundstage 25, and that's just a guess based on process of elimination and what soundstages are being used for film and other projects at that time. That might be the one. Don't know precisely. So at least 4 houses and soundstages coming up, so they've kept that going, but they started that in 2013. So by doing that, they used the other 4 locations they had at the time: Disaster, Building 79, the Parade Building, and the 2 sprung tents. Of course, that's changed since then. Oh dear. All sorts of weird, strange changes keep happening, but we're not going to get to that yet, of course, because we're talking about 2013. But they did go back up to 8 houses. What fun. And so the next house, the 5th house of that event that we'll be talking about now, was the house located in the disaster overflow queue area in the San Francisco area of the park. Yes. And it was the first of 3 original houses that year. Yes, they had the 5 intellectual properties, of which we've already talked about 4 of them, and the 3 original houses, and yet another IP we haven't got to yet. So, the first of the original houses, and it wasn't just any original house. Yes, they did manage to keep at least one of the promises that they made back in 2010, during the New Age of Darkness, which was a bit short-lived. One of the promises was they wanted to, of course, come up with the new franchises, the new houses that would come back year after year, like they had in the past with Body Collectors and Cycle Scarabee, and in Scary Tales, which became popular franchises. They'd like to do that with some new ones that would go on. And one of the ones that was really, really a notable house from the year 2010, in fact, probably one of the most notable houses of 2010, as it won, quite deservedly, I believe, House of the Year that year, was Havoc Dogs of War. And so this house would be the sequel to Havoc Dogs of War, continuing that franchise. And it was called Havoc Derailed. So, for the benefit of those of you out there, and I know there are probably a few, who for some reason were not able to attend the event of Halloween Horror Nights 20 Years of Fear, back in 2010, and for some reason haven't bothered to go and watch my own videos on the history of that event. Why you'd be watching this one now without watching those then, I don't know, but I know it happens because I can look on YouTube and see how many people have watched each video, and sometimes more people have watched a later video than they've watched an earlier one, so I know there's people watching this that haven't watched that. Therefore, there's people out there who might not be totally familiar with Havoc Dogs of War. For that reason now, I shall try to give a brief, yes, brief recap. Right. So, Havoc Dogs of War from 2010 was set in a very, very top secret military installation called Shadow Creek. Shadow Creek. Shady Brook. Coincidence? I rather think not. Maybe something to do with something called Blackwater, I don't know. But that's another story. Anyway, it was a top secret military installation where military officers of very high rank, I'm suppose, working together with scientists, began a series of experiments. An experimental project to create a new top secret military asset. Yes. By experimenting various forms of surgery, I'm sure, along with genetic manipulation, probably, chemical enhancement, maybe even cybernetic technology. God knows what they were doing to these poor kids. Taking ordinary military members as soldiers and transforming them through all of these techniques into a paranormal special operative force. Yes. Codenamed Dogs of War. A line from Shakespeare. Yes. From Julius Caesar. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Yes. For your thespians out there. That's the reference. So they took these women and men both, and created them into what basically super soldiers. But they weren't looking for Steve Rogers, not Captain America. Oh no, 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 no. It wasn't enough that they used these techniques, these experimental processes to augment and give them superhuman strength and agility and reflexes and ability to adapt to various toxic and dangerous environments and recover more quickly from any wounds or injuries they might, increasing their endurance and adaptability and recovery, you know. No, it wasn't enough to take what are already agile, mobile, hostile, would adapt and overcome troops and making them into super soldiers. It wasn't enough. No, 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 no. They had to do some other training, perhaps psychological training or chemical drugs, whatever, to alter the neurological, psychological modes, removing any inhibitions, any moral, ethical inhibitions they might have, eliminating any sort of thing that you might consider a conscience from their minds, creating someone who would be ruthless and dangerous and deadly and would annihilate the enemy with extreme prejudice. Yes, that's what they want, a weapon. Yes, so they did that, and they did their job quite well. Too well. Except silly people, they forgot one important thing. What good? A dog of war is only as good as the leash you got that dog on. Yes, because once unleashed, it might bite you. You see, they forgot in their programming to include absolute control. They forgot loyalty. The dogs ended up being loyal to each other, but not to those who were supposed to be the commanding officers. In short, they could not control these beasts when they unleashed them, and therefore, what happened? They overran the Shadow Creek facility, slaughtered all the personnel there, and went on a rampage. That was the House back in 2010. So, the House in 2013, Havoc Derailed, was a direct sequel, the aftermath of that incident in Shadow Creek. What happened? Well, of course, you know what had to happen. The United States military sent all of their forces in to control the situation as best they could. What could they do? I'm not 100% certain of the backstory, but I believe they incapacitated those dogs, who were most likely through some form of gas, quite possibly a powerful nerve agent that would sedate these, most likely would have killed normal people, but in this case would have temporarily incapacitated and sedated the dogs long enough for them to run in, get them and put them into some sort of restraints and containment units. Once they got them controlled that way, what they had to do then was to ship the dogs from the ruins of Shadow Creek to another, even more top-secret military installation where they'd had the facilities to then proceed to dispose of those dogs of war, well, kill them, basically, but first, of course, doing all sorts of lovely experimental surgery, exploratory, cutting their brains open, finding out what went wrong with the project, so that next time they could make soldiers that are just as awesome, powerful, unstoppable killers, but that they could control and would follow orders and wouldn't come after them and go berserk and crazy and kill everybody, including their own commanding officers, because that's just not practical, you see. So that's what they wanted to do. And so how to get them from point A to point B? Well, a top secret military train. See, that's what they would do, and the train would run at a fast-speed rail in the darkest night when no one knew that train was going by, containing all of these dogs of war to the facility where this would happen. Except, of course, again, they made those little pound puppies a bit too well. And so naturally, recovering quickly, remember all that adapt overcome stuff. They recover from the nerve agent, they wake up, they break out of their bonds, they overrun the train, the soldier guards there on the train are no match for them. They overthrow the train, literally, it derails and crashes, horrible train wreck, somewhere near the little town of Cary, Ohio, of course, and then they get loose and do what they do best, wreak havoc. That's Havoc Derailed, basically, the plot line. A lot of this information could be seen in a lovely Q video. Oh yes, the disaster overflow Q area was one location where they almost always had some lovely Q videos, even after they stopped doing that at most of the other houses. And so you could always count on whatever house was there for some lovely video that was quite wonderful. And sometimes they went all out to make lovely vignettes. In this one, you saw some military officers speaking on a talk show, news report shows, giving out the version of an event that occurred, a train accident and hostile somebody, trying very carefully not to release any of the classified information, giving a cover story so that they could explain what was wrong, you know, the usual military bullshit, covering up the real situation on a television station, I believe, in Cary, Ohio. But it also was interspersed with actual top secret military footage from inside the laboratories, where you saw scientists working on the project, and then what happened to him when the dogs got loose. Who let the dogs out? Woof, woof, yeah, exactly. And they got killed in nasty ways. And anyone who went to see the Bill and Ted show that year might have recognized one of these scientists as someone who was in a cast of that show, playing some very amusing characters. I believe the protocols are that I'm not supposed to give out the actual names of performers in the Bill and Ted show. For some reason, this fellow, though, is someone that I've known for a very long time. Used to come as a guest to Pleasure Island when I worked there back in the early part of this century, and I was one of my first secret sources. Sort of back then, a lot of the information wasn't really all that top secret, and would tell me about, you know, Eddie and Cindy and that sort of stuff back in 2001, 2002, and so I still have some friendship with him, and have chatted and met him at the event. Lots of fun. And that year he played at least 2 or 3 characters in Bill and Ted, including some very memorable ones. I suppose we can talk about what he played, even though I didn't give his name, including the J.J. Abrams Avatar joke about sex with her tails, and a wonderful diva performance from Les Miserables. Yes. I dreamed a dream, you know, that one. Yes, so if you saw the show, you might recognize him in the video where he played a scientist. So going into the house itself, which I almost have no time to do, typical. Going into the house, of course, you have the train. There it is, right there, great big train, the front of the train. And as you enter the first room, it is, I think, an auxiliary room where there's a guard and lots of scientific equipment and monitors before you actually enter the train itself. And he sort of yells and barks commands at you. I went to the guard with his gun and everything. And when they first showed some preview images for the house on the internet before the event opened, you might have seen what looked like Mary Garner's face on one of the monitors. Oh, a cameo from Bloody Mary. Oh, goody. Except I went through this house an enormous number of times running through the course of 2013. Many, many times I went through the house, more than it probably deserved. Why? Because partially because of Legendary Truth campaigns and having to go through houses for that, but also because one of the person I went to the event with a lot that year was someone who really liked this house a lot, and so always wanted to keep going back into it, and so it did it a lot. So I went to the house dozens of times, and I did like the house, but dozens of times, and I never saw Mary Garner's face come up on that screen once. I always look for it because I remember that photo that was on the internet. Never saw it, so I don't think they actually used it at the event, if it was ever there at all in the first place, and it wasn't just what people thought. It was something other than what people thought it was. Anyway, After that, you enter the train itself. And they did a rather wonderful job of recreating what was just like train cars. You know, long, narrow rooms, just like train cars. And of course, the little spaces in between the cars we have to step over and go through. You know, just like you're on a train, you go from one car to the other. You go through that little place in between the two cars before you go into the next car. So they had that recreated very nicely. It was just like going through room after room. And they had set up this house in a long straight line, obviously, back in this Astor Q area to go through several different train cars. So you're going through several different train cars initially. And of course, at first, you're in the car and the dogs are there. They're not really dogs, by the way. They're not puppies. They're humans. They're just called that. You know, shaved heads. Men and women both, shaved heads. Little UPC symbol tattooed on the back of their heads. But dressed in military outfits. You know, lots of sleeveless shirts and big muscles. Both the girls and the boys, big muscles. Hostile, agile, mobile, that sort of thing, right? So you got that, and they're all in their restraints, little cubicles, little cells, containment units. Some are tied to tables and stuff, and of course immediately start getting loose, start getting aggressive, start coming after you. The guards are starting to try to stop them. There's gunfire, that sort of stuff in the first car. Okay, and I've already run out of time, so I have to move on to part 12. Of course.